Hi, this is Katie Shell, and this is Being Lilith. This video that I'm making right now, recording right now, is an introduction to the episode that is about fear and communication between men and women, and some of my experiences with that, and some of my feelings about that from a personal perspective. It was intended as I kind of, and as you'll see in the introduction, as you watch the video, I do say something along the lines of gender roles and gender identification, and my perspectives on that have shifted dramatically just in the last few days. But because these videos are a journey, and not a be all end all or single definition or single way of exploring things. The things that I explore in this video, I still consider important and valid parts of the conversation, but there's going to be more. There's going to be more about understanding fluidity and how we all take on roles and how we all can learn from each other in different ways by letting ourselves be really open and not be defined by any one thing or anything, any box, anything really. But I do still believe that that this video and the roles between men and women that we see played out and kind of have been ingrained in our society are extremely important to this process. So as always, this is an ongoing thing. Please look for more. Please continue to follow and enjoy the rest of this video. And in this episode, I am kind of talking about my exploration with gender roles and connections, interactions between men and women, and then also how our own gender identification and how the divine masculine and divine feminine shows up in me, shows up in other people, what that really is, and how it complicates things when we're trying to have conversations with people, when we're trying to connect with other people. So with that, the divine feminine is something, as you know, I will harp on and we'll talk on over and over, is this thing that is being suppressed and is being feared, has been feared for millennia. That is why it is suppressed. It is not suppressed because it is inherently weak. It is made to be weak because it is feared, and it is very important to understand that. There's nothing weak about being feminine. There's nothing weak about that at all. It's a strength. It's the strength, but it's a different kind of strength. It's the strength that comes from understanding and knowing and our instincts and our intuition and being in touch and taking on 1,000 different nuanced cues and learning how to tune into them and learning how to at times manipulate them. And that can be one of those things that has been feared about that divine feminine energy, is the mass. And in this sense, I'm going to talk about men and women, because that's generally how we see it play out. Those are the examples that we're seeing. I always want to emphasize that this is not always the way it is. It can be any sort of gender identification or role that somebody is taking on in these conversations. But again, speaking in broader terms and as examples, and really as a tool of the evolution of humanity, these are the places that we're seeing it played out, is the dynamics and the things that we see in our everyday life. So the dynamics between men and women. And so that there is this fear. There's that fear. What happens with women? What happens with, again, the nuanced intelligence of the divine feminine? Feminine is that we are constantly taking in all of these little different cues and we're acting on them and we're understanding how to do it. And so it can seem to some like we are maybe manipulating something or manipulating another person by using the images of the phrases of feminine wiles, and how that they're, stay, the whole story of Lilith is, she's gonna suck your soul or kill your children or whatever terrible demonic thing that Lilith is gonna do to you, because she is wild and because she is in tune with her own sense of self, her own instincts, so she can act on them very quickly and doesn't care what you think or what you want. And so because of that, instead of using all that information to care for you and to take care of you and to nurture you and nourish you, she's using it to follow her own desires, to create her own desires, which is no less feminine, using all that information to create power, to create control, to create understanding is no less feminine than using that information, those instincts, that intuition, to be nourishing and taking care of people. And there's this fear of the masculine, of being controlled by that, of not knowing what to expect. So they try to ask questions and they try to look at things and it tries to understand things and tries to, again, put things in boxes. So okay, this woman, if she is expressing her instincts and intuition to care for children, she is safe. If she's expressing her instincts and intuition to get a job or to make money or to get something else that isn't taking care of children or taking care of men, then there's something wrong with it, that there's something to be feared of it. And that's not true. There's women, the divine feminine is no less in desire to have power or to have control. The divine masculine just does it through structure. They do it through building things and controlling things through putting them in boxes. And I want to say sorting them out, but that's not exactly what it is. It's about, again, but it's linear. It's very linear, whereas the feminine is soft and more fluid, because it moves and you can't catch the water, right? I mean, you can't catch water, but you put water in a jar, it takes on the shape of the jar. You put it in something else, it takes on the shape of whatever it is, whatever its environment is. And that's another one of these pieces of the divine feminine. So then we find these situations where we are feared, where we're fearing the other one because we don't know what to do. And we don't know how to ask, and we don't know how to speak up, because there's been so much baggage, so much conditioning that says we can't trust the other one. We can't trust the other one to understand their own feelings, because their feelings are different than mine. The way they express things, the way they understand things. We are so concerned with how we come across, we forget how to represent who we are. And when we allow ourselves to take responsibility for who we are, sometimes that's frowned upon, sometimes that's scary, sometimes that is the thing that is shamed, or that we feel guilty about doing. But if we are all doing that, if we are all willing to just be honest about what our needs are and speak up for them, then people, maybe somebody will be disappointed or frustrated or some other thing temporarily because they're not getting what we want. And we all get annoyed when we're not getting what we want, or irritated, or whatever the word of the day is, or whatever the trigger that's happening is invoking in us. But it doesn't mean that we can't be responsible for those, that we project those feelings on whoever activated us. If you can't be there for me, tell me. If you're afraid of something you think I'm going to do, or I think you're going to do, like, have a conversation with me about it instead of stewing and being afraid that something is going to be wrong or that somebody is going to react in a way. We are adults. We are all adults. And if you're not able to do that, then and you know what? If somebody is not able to do that, if somebody's not able to take on responsibility for their own feelings and for their own expression of their own feelings, they're not worth your fucking time. So move on. Let them figure it out. Don't deal with it. Don't waste a minute having to deal with other people who don't know how to feel or who don't know how to express it. It's a hard lesson to learn. No question, it's a hard lesson to learn as we explore relationships between these quickly evolving relationships between men and women, because there is so much fear about what we are supposed to say, here, why, when, who are we hurting, why are we hurting. We want to be responsible. Awake men, wonderful, kind, generous men are afraid of talking to women because they're afraid of hurting them. Wonderful, brilliant women are afraid of triggering something in a man because they've always, because that's the way that society puts us in, separates the classrooms into boys and girls, and the girls do one thing and the boys do the other thing, even if they're or the boys are doing something together and the girls are doing something together, and we don't know how to talk to each other. And so we have to learn how to express ourselves. We have to take responsibility for our own sovereignty in all of our relationships. Because when we don't, there becomes this undercurrent of weird power dynamics that nobody knows what to do with. And everyone ends up tripping over themselves because of it. Tripping over themselves, especially. There are things that cause certain people to trip over themselves a little bit more than others, I suppose. But it's still something that is being shown. Something that is being, every time these kinds of relationships happen, these issues come up, it's because we need to see something, and we are all needing to see this in 100 different ways. We are needing to see how we take responsibility for our own sense of self and allowing others to take responsibility for themselves, their sense of self. In the Lilith story, it's Lilith didn't want to be responsible for Adam, meeting his needs, and he had no interest in meeting hers. And so she got up and she left, and she figured out a way to take care of her own needs, and he made somebody who would take care of his needs, in a different way. And so it was, if they just said, this is what I need, and then it would have been fine. There would have been a way for them to move forward. But who is more evolved? It's interesting when you think about it. You think about Adam sitting in his little sanctuary and not being willing to interact with something that is uncomfortable for him. And that's where growth happens. That's part of what Eden is, right? That's part of the Garden of Eden. That's the next story, right? That's when Eve shows up. It's always the women causing trouble, so to speak. is, or at least that's what they say. They say that it's the women causing trouble. First, it's Lilith saying, I won't submit to you. And second, it was Eve saying, I want knowledge. Adam was perfectly content to just sit and like let the world revolve around him and not have any interactions. But that's never going to be the way it works, because the women will keep standing up and leaving, and the men will, and then the men have tried to control that and find ways to, suppressing them through physical restraint, through um, all sorts of things that are done physically to control women and have been done for thousands of years, um, with men physically overpowering women to scare them into submission, because they knew, they were so afraid of what we could be, of disrupting their logic and their orderliness of that was created for growth and control. So control and compliance and conformity, because control and compliance and conformity creates, you create workers and you create obedient servants who then help to build the society in that the backs are, whose back society becomes built on, because of the suppression. So it's, these dynamics show up in a lot of different areas in the world, not just between men and women, but anyone who is considered to be um, less than. But it is all a result, or all a part of just learning how to be, and just once we start taking responsibility for ourselves, because that is the thing that I've been experiencing so much over the last few weeks, is having conversations with men, in ways that I haven't been able to. I just have been, prior to being here, I had been surrounded by, in these new emerging relationships in my life, there's a greater sense of vulnerability in a way, which is weird, to say it in that way, but it's true. It's almost a, because a couple months ago I wrote in one of my journals, I wrote, can there be mutual vulnerability between people? Can you really and in an equal relationship, can one person, because it felt to me that in most of my relationships, especially with men, or boys, my children are boys, like, again, it was such a tiny window, and there was no, and so it really made me question, is it possible to have these kinds of mutually vulnerable relationships? Can we be open with each other? Because in order to be strong, we have to be willing to be vulnerable. And this is actually one of the conversations I had with somebody recently. In order to be strong, we have to be willing to be vulnerable. And most people are so need that safety, and this is also a Lilith issue, that safety of conformity, the illusion of safety, of the illusion of security of conformity versus sovereignty and authenticity. And that's always going to be a power play with the Lilith issues, for anyone, for men or women. And it's become pretty apparent to me that men struggle with this quite a bit too. They struggle with the vulnerability versus authenticity. They want that comfort, they want that security just as much as women do. They have been told to suppress it too. They have been convinced that it is not manly enough, or strong enough, or powerful enough, or whatever it is that they are supposed to be, to allow themselves to be vulnerable, to allow themselves to be open about what they really want and they really feel and how they want to be able to trust those instincts, because we all have these strong instincts and we all have this intuitive primal self that needs to be expressed in some way or another. And so when we are willing to have those conversations with each other, we feel the safety actually comes from it. The safety then comes from within instead of without. The safety comes from being so safe and so secure and so willing to be yourself that you are able to do what you need to do, and that you are able to make the things, create the things you desire in your life, go after the things you desire in your life, go after the things that you need from a place of safety and security, because we always have to come back to that base. And that comes from trusting ourselves, trusting our instincts, and trusting our intuition. And so we can help each other. We can, men and women can help each other and need to help each other in expressing these things and being, above all else, being willing to be open, being willing to be vulnerable, and being willing to trust the other one without the fear of manipulation, without the fear of being controlled. And we don't always know when we're controlling somebody. We don't always know when we are asserting our power over another person. But if we are willing to speak up and say, I am being suppressed by you right now, and if we are willing to say, I am sorry, I didn't mean to suppress you right now, I am being me and you are being you, we can find that safety, we can find that security, we can find that balance with each other, and we can continue to grow, we continue to create these dialogues, and we continue to, again, find that balance within us between the masculine and feminine, and really, again, evolve as humans. So I hope this helps. Thank you so much, and tune again for more on being Lilith.